I slept in today, so I missed the keynote live, but I did listen to it just barely, so I'm going to talk about it. There are a couple of really interesting things that I am feeling kind of apprehensive about. It's specifically on these two slides here. Yeah, so these are in different parts of the talk, but first of all, I think it's great that they're looking at other frameworks and being inspired by them. So you've got Svelte's authoring simplicity, Vue's approach to single file components, Svelte stores and simplified state management, Solid's reactivity, which is awesome, React's unidirectional data flow, which is called reactivity, and Vue's animations, and Aurora's image component. Okay. So, okay, all right. And then later she says these are coming. Easier and simplified API, including state management, revamp of this reactivity system. So instead of Zone.js and change detection, they're calling it the reactivity system. I remember in my NgConf talk in 2019, I thought it was kind of weird to maybe call change detection DOM reaction, but that's what it is. Improved perform. I think in general, I think reactivity is becoming more and more well understood, and maybe it's just me personally, but I have seen articles that are just like adding more pieces to the story, and so that's good. I'm hoping to write more articles and hopefully contribute more. But anyway, improved performance, image component, better hydration for SSR, better stack traces, better accessibility. Right. So there's one other thing that she mentioned, and I think it may have been she was talking about it, but it was on this slide. But basically, Vue's computed properties. So, they mentioned Svelte a couple times, and it seemed, look at this. Svelte stores and simplified state management. State management. You've got the compiler in Svelte that handles reactivity. I don't think they're talking about that. And then here, they're talking about stores, and state management is usually this thing that people refer to as like this thing where you share it between components. It's this really separate and explicit thing that's apart from your components. I'm pretty sure they're talking about Svelte stores here. And then easier and simplified API, including state management. So this concerns me, because Svelte stores kind of suck. I love Svelte in general, but stores seem like this random, this really basic thing stapled on top. And I listened to a talk. It was like 20 minutes long. I don't remember who did it, but maybe it was 30 minutes long. But the entire thing was going through an example problem or multiple where it was increasing complexity, and basically it was like a real solid, like just a really tough struggle that he went through until he figured out a way to use Svelte stores to basically get something like RxJS, but not quite as powerful. Basically, he said, I want this store to be in charge of this data, but what if this data depends on something that's somewhere else? Well, I don't want the component to have to worry about what its dependencies are. So if I can make it declarative, and I'm just like, man, this is so much work. He could have saved so much time and energy if he had known about RxJS. And then Angular should know about RxJS. Why wouldn't Angular? I mean, what would be appealing about Svelte stores that Angular would want? What could it be? And it's the simplicity, right? That has to be it. That's what they have labeled it as. It's simple. But it's not simple. It's simple to do. It's simple to implement, but it actually sucks to use because it's an imperative API. You have to do a lot of work to make it reactive and declarative. So I don't know. I mean, I really hope it. No, it looks like they're going to do this, and it sucks. It makes me sad because RxJS is so much better. And there's this backlash against RxJS that the Angular team has absorbed. It was in a couple of issues that they commented on. They know that the community is split and they want to support reactivity like in a way that isn't coupled to RxJS. And I'm just like, no. It makes me happy that they're aware of Solid because at least Solid, their reactivity is easy to plug RxJS into. So I hope they do something like that. But Svelte stores, why Svelte stores? Why not signals? That is so much better. And derived, memos, that would be so much better. Why talk about Svelte stores? So, yeah, that backlash against RxJS, to me, it's two things. Well, three things. One is the operators and the API in general. The API itself in simple examples. And for that, it's actually really simple. It's as hard as your problem is. And for the problem that you have, the RxJS you have to know is the exact amount that fits your problem. So it's only good. It like if you're worried about all the operators you have to learn, what you're actually worrying about is all the different kind of apps you have to create. And so if you don't need an operator, maybe you don't need to learn it. Actually, that's definitely true. So that is sort of just a thing that goes away with experience, and it's true with every library. So that is kind of a non-issue. The issue is when people use complex operators when they don't need to, like fork join instead of combine latest. Everybody knows combine latest. It's like the basic merge combining operator. But fork join, like why? Like it's less capable than combine latest. Like with combine latest, you can just drop in a WebSocket, a stream, or any observable. But fork join depends on what it's referring to complete. It depends on that. So you can help your teammates by choosing simpler operators sometimes. Like first versus take one. Take is a little more general and it's not more lines of code. So I kind of prefer take personally. I just like simplifying things to the fewest number that can get the most done. So that takes care of that concern, I think, as much as you can. And it's not a concern beyond that. It's just an inherent difficulty of programming. If you don't use these operators, you're going to come up with some ad hoc solution that's probably more imperative. And so the operators are good. And then, so most people get over that pretty fast. And then the other two things are the part that people think is RxJS's fault, but it's actually Angular's fault. Angular integrated RxJS in a really sloppy way. It put it in a couple places, but not other places. Didn't make it easy to use. It just wasn't super well thought out, and it seemed like not part of the core library. It just was kind of this extra thing added on later. So that creates a problem where you have this great way to define derived state, and it can be async or synchronous, and I can't believe it. It feels to me like Angular is abandoning something amazing by moving away from RxJS. It's really, really, really bothering me. So it's awesome on its own. The problem is Angular, because in Svelte even, all you have to do is add a $sign in front of the template, and it handles everything for you. You can use it like any other value. But with Angular, you have to do like this async pipe and then as whatever and do it in NgConf, which makes no sense. And it's just like this complete afterthought that doesn't feel natural at all within Angular. And then you got the change detection. You got the lifecycle hooks that are imperative, and so many things are imperative. Component inputs can't even be expressed as observables unless you do a lot of middle code in every single component you write. So it's a crappy integration. That is the problem. So that's another problem. But then maybe the biggest problem is thinking reactively, and that thinking declaratively, where you, instead of looking at like a chainal cause of events, or a causal chain, that was weird, a causal chain of events, instead of looking at that where you have like a method calls this and that and that and that, instead of that, you're thinking declaratively. So you want to say what a thing is and what it depends on and have that all in one place. That just takes getting used to. Anyway, so the resistance to RxJS would be those three things: thinking declaratively, the integration with RxJS itself, and then the operators. Okay, so now let's look at this alternative system. You have Svelte stores. Okay, let's say that Angular is considering implementing something like Svelte stores, which I don't get because you basically have that already with services. What is the problem? So, what do they do that RxJS and services don't do? I mean, even just services. Basic. You don't need to know very much RxJS to mimic the behavior of Svelte stores. Just have it be a subject or a behavior subject, and that's it. You have a Svelte store basically. So I really hope they don't take this too seriously, because they are. I really hope they change their mind or something, because Svelte stores are simpler. The simplicity of Svelte stores is the same simplicity as RxJS. Behavior subjects, and then nothing else from RxJS. So it's like taking a piece from RxJS, and then everything you have to do to handle it is imperative. So it's simple up front, but it leads to spaghetti garbage code. The imperative updates from out of context places. This is why Redux was invented to begin with. Oh, but you're looking for like simplicity. Yeah, well, it's not going to help for anything non-trivial. It's going to be a regression. This isn't going to, it's not going to be an improvement. It's going to be simpler in that it's less capable. That's it. Because you subscribe to Svelte stores just like behavior subjects, and you set the state just like you do with Svelte stores. It's just so, to me, this is dumb, very dumb, to like look over at Svelte and be like, oh man, people love Svelte. Let's take in whatever we can. And this whole state management thing, people are kind of rebelling against these complicated things. But I don't know. To me, it's just not, it doesn't come from a place that's intimately familiar with thinking reactively or RxJS itself, because once you flip into the reactive mindset, once you flip over to that, you can kind of see where things are imperative and where they aren't. And the only thing that Svelte is different from RxJS is that it doesn't have as much, and so you have to manage it imperatively. So you have the exact same thing already in behavior subjects. So why do you want them? It makes no sense. Just for the sake of copying something from Svelte, it doesn't make sense. Oh man, I hope this doesn't happen. So I need to write a bunch of articles for Svelte. I need to get more experience in it. I need to really try to push reactivity in Svelte more because they think that like they solved it, because they're coming from React, and React is similar to Angular where you got change detection or re-rendering everything. They're both kind of global top-down approaches to managing reactivity, and it's reactive without your code being reactive. And so Svelte, the idea is, oh, Svelte's more reactive. And so like, wow, Svelte is like ultimate reactivity. It's built into the framework itself. It's the compiler. It's reactivity. Like this is as far as it gets. Oops. But that's clearly wrong. Functional reactive programming is as reactive as it gets, because in Svelte, how do you declare a dependency that's asynchronous? You don't. You have to have a callback function with imperative commands. Imperative is the opposite of reactive. So I need to write a bunch of articles explaining all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, programming reactively is easier in Svelte than Angular today, not because of Svelte stores, not because of that, because of the $ syntax of subscribing in the template and just how minimal it is in general. It's so much nicer to program reactively in Svelte. So copy that. Don't copy the stupid Svelte stores. Like, they're so simple. They're so simple, and they're not very capable, and they make your code complex. So yeah, I'm not a fan of Svelte stores. But yeah, so if they think that this backlash against RxJS, if they think that they can solve it by removing RxJS, they're wrong, because the operator thing, people are still going to have hard problems, and they're going to have to come up with their own ad hoc solutions to those asynchronous workflows. And then for thinking reactively, like, doesn't matter. To the degree that you're thinking reactively, you're going to want something better than Svelte stores. But if you're not thinking reactively, then behavior subjects would have been just as good. Okay, so the backlash is when people want to think reactively more, and like their teammates or whatever, and then they look at the code and like, oh, this is reactive code. But those same developers are going to not just be using the simple Angular state management solution because it's not going to be reactive, and they want to think reactively. They want declarative code, and good for them. But yeah, so it's not going to solve that. Simpler state management APIs are not going to solve the thinking reactively problem. Yeah, and these sentences are weird. Okay. And then the other one is the integration with Angular. If they're prioritizing these other things instead of making better integrations with RxJS, I worry that the only way to program reactively in Angular or Svelte, RxJS, will take a back seat, and it will still suck. And so the backlash will still be there, because people still want to use RxJS because it provides async. I wish declarativity was a word, but async declarations, okay? Async reactivity. And so people are still going to use that, and there's still going to be a problem. And then what you're going to end up with is Angular is going to be this like Frankenstein framework that kind of like how I see Vue is like, yeah, she mentioned it, like Vue is taken from everything. You're like, yeah, I hate Vue. That's why I kind of hate Vue. I love Vue to begin with. I was like, awesome, look at these single file components. Oh, okay, they got this weird, oh, this is how AngularJS should have been. Like, I thought it was so cool. And then just over the years, every time I look at Vue, it looks totally different. And it's so annoying that like there's no coherent philosophy behind any of it. So you don't know what you're going to end up with when you start working on a Vue project. You don't know what it's going to look like. And it feels like nobody really is in charge. It feels kind of like there's no coherent philosophy that. So you get the cons from every approach, as in like you have to know all the APIs, but you don't get the pros, because the pro of an approach is that you it lets you think a certain way. And then if you're always having to change mindsets depending on what part of the code base you're working on, it's, you don't really get that benefit. So, and that's different from meeting or having the solution meet the complexity of the problem. Like I talked about in my article series, Progressive Reactivity in Angular, you can have something that is totally reactive and yet dynamic and adaptive to the complexity of the problem you're working on. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like this heavy top-down solution that's put upon every single feature. I'm talking about the fact that you have two ways of doing the same exact thing, and you never know which one you're going to need, and then you switch mindsets every time because you don't know what people chose to do, and you have to just support all these mental models in your head. It just feels like trying everything and not understanding any of it, really, fundamentally, thoroughly. And I don't want Angular to become like this. I bet it will, because it feels like they're just going to like staple all these extra paradigms on top of Angular, and so support everything that everyone wants to do, and it's just going to be a mess. The one thing I'm super looking forward to in Angular is zoneless stuff, because that actually requires reactivity. If Angular, this is the best thing that I think could happen for Angular right now, based on what I've seen in this keynote and everything. If Angular takes Solid's reactivity, Svelte's template approach, and maybe a few small things. So computed properties, like, to me, they're just selectors, and you don't want to couple your code so much to the framework you're using. It's not a good practice. It really endangers you. It exposes you to API changes, so you get hit by them a lot harder. So I don't like that idea. I like RxJS or selectors where they're kind of this own thing, and it's consistent, and it focuses on your business logic, less on the stuff around it. So I don't like that. Plus, it puts more logic in your components, which I don't love. Like, it makes it so that they have to be in your components. I think that's how computed properties work. I think maybe Vuex has its own thing, but anyway. So the best possible thing would be, SolidJS's reactivity with Svelte-like templates, single file components, and it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of stuff from Vue, but then you can still have observables that plug into the components, just like you have with Solid. That would be the best future. And then you can turn off change detection, and then Angular becomes almost as fast as Svelte and Solid, maybe. Somewhere between there, probably. That would be the best outcome for Angular based on what I've seen. I think I've already talked enough about the worst outcome, but just all of these different things put together and people not knowing which one to use, and all of them requiring different mindsets, and just a sea of pointless chaos. Like, pointless chaos. I love variety, and I love all the good stuff that can come from it, but when it's pointless, when you don't really understand why you have these different things, then it just becomes noise and unnecessary friction. And to me, moving from RxJS to Svelte stores, to me that is awful. Like, I can't think of anything that would be worse than that move when you have behavior subjects in RxJS, which Angular developers are already familiar with. It's unfathomable unfathomable. It's unfathomable to me that could be seen as a positive thing from Angular's perspective. I do not understand that at all. So I hope that doesn't happen. I really hope that doesn't happen. And I kind of think that even if it does happen, someone will be like, yay, new thing. Because there are some people who always are like that. Like, hey, this new thing, I have to couple my code to it and then get burned by it later when everyone turns their back on it. There's just people who, they're like, hey, it's a new thing, and they're saying this is good and because they released it. Okay, I'm all in. Yeah. Think about what it actually does. And like, think about it before you try something. You don't have to use everything. You don't have to use everything. I guess that's the whole point of this video. You don't have to use everything. All right. Well, yeah. I feel like I have a lot of work to do. I want to do as much as I can to help people think reactively and not go for every suboptimal solution because it appears simple to begin with. I really want to do what I can to influence that. But yeah. Anyway. All right. Let me know if I'm wrong about anything. I may have interpreted this weird. I mean, you can see the pictures here. I don't think I interpreted this wrong, but you know, there might be more nuance to this that I don't understand. I kind of doubt it, but there might be. There's always that possibility. So, yeah, I want to hear any feedback anybody might have. But anyway, yeah. All right. See ya.